My kid shoved his thingy in the toilet seat again.
Oh my God.
Happy holidays, everyone. We are back to the Home Alone franchise for Home Alone 3 and that memorable line. It's a script apparently by John Hughes once again.
Mm-hmm.
They say that. I don't really
Yeah.
believe it unless they
No.
held him at gunpoint or he just got drunk and turned something in. The director is the director of such classics as Never Been Kissed and the Scooby-Doo movie, so that might tell you something about the level of this. It was the last one to go into cinemas. After this, it's all direct to streaming, etc., video, etc. No more McAllisters. They've gone. Macaulay Culkin went on to bigger things. They couldn't afford him anymore. So there's a new kid in this one and a new family. And the plot is kind of mental considering it's a Home Alone movie. The plot is then you've got this really fancy Japanese gadget, a microchip, and it's in a fancy new Christmas toy. And the toy ends up in the hands of this annoying kid. And that's why these crooks have travelled across the world from Hong Kong to America to try and get it back. Alone plot, although in many ways it doesn't feel very much like Home Alone, because for a lot of the movie he's not even home alone, and they have to try and come up with contrived plot reasons for him to be occasionally home alone, which isn't quite the same thing. So, Rachel, what did you think of Home Alone 3?
This movie was not good. It was not good. Look, I think there are a lot of issues with this movie. First of all, I think it's a really lazy script. Like, when I looked it up and it said that John Hughes wrote the script, I was like you. I was like, what? Was he drunk? Was he on drugs? Like, I know a John Hughes script, a John Hughes script is usually good and heartwarming and fun. This script was just dumb. And I think one of the biggest issues for me was, you already mentioned it, this, even though it was a cast change, I've seen sequels with cast changes that still manage to feel like they belong in the film franchise. This didn't feel like a Home Alone film. This just felt like a generic, kid heist film that literally could have been any generic, made-for-TV movie. I know it went to the cinema, which I'm really surprised at. And a lot of the stuff that, they obviously tried to copy from the first movie just didn't work. Like, for example, why was this movie set at Christmas? There was no reason for this movie to be set at Christmas. Like, the original movies are set at Christmas because, so that they can go on holiday, so you can have the magic of Christmas, as we talked about in the reviews for the first two movies. The Christmas setting adds to the movie. For this, there was nothing. They obviously tried to make the family dynamic similar, with the older siblings hating the younger siblings. Oh, shout out to a very young Scarlett Johansson in what was probably one of her very early roles. But again, it just, because I didn't find any of the actors charismatic. See, in the first one, Kevin's a little snot, but you love Macaulay Culkin, so you love watching him. The older siblings are horrible, but they get really memorable lines. You kicked off our first review with "You're such a disease, Kevin," and "You're what the French call les incompetents." You have fun lines, whereas this one, they just didn't have that. I feel like they were trying to give them some fun lines. I know they gave her some line you've shamed the family name, Kevin, or whatever the kid's name was. And it just didn't work. And for me, one of the biggest issues with this film was you really had to stretch your willing suspension of disbelief. Now, we've talked about the first two films, how there's a certain kind of thing that you have to employ where you have to remember it's a kid's film, or rather it's a family film, it's set at Christmas, things are going to be a bit fantastical. But so with the original films, Harry and Marv are just small town crooks. They're small town burglars. They obviously know what they're doing, but you can believe a 7-year-old getting the upper hand in his own house with these two kind of run-of-the-mill crooks, and Kevin has to be rescued by the adults anyway. In the first movie, the Marley character saves him. In the second movie, the Bird Lady saves him. Whereas in this movie, I'm supposed to buy that 4 trained spies that are so highly ranked, they're moving some international, piece of machinery that apparently can overwrite any missiles, and I'm I'm supposed to believe that they are so incompetent that, first of all, they lost the chip when they were transferring it. Second, that they actually can be outdone by some 6 or 7-year-old snot. And third, that like, you know, like I'm supposed to believe that these are like international criminals, and they just come across as like bumbling idiots. And like, it wasn't working for me at all.
Yeah.
They also didn't have any of the charisma of like Joe Pesci and, I always forget, Daniel Stern. You know, like those two are fun. Their antics are fun. Their physical comedy is hilarious. These guys they just weren't entertaining. There was one of them that I didn't mind, the one with the long hair. He kind of looked really greasy and had like a drawl, because he is an actor from Law and Order SVU, and he plays a lawyer on there, and he's a very regular character, and so I know him from that. But yeah, no, I just found this movie really dumb and really boring and very uninspired. And there wasn't like, I feel like you could really tell that they were trying to cash in on the first two movies. It had that sort of desperation air for me. And so, yeah, I really didn't enjoy it. What about you? How did you go while you were watching it?
Yeah, so this was the first time watch for both of us.
Yeah.
And it was crap, and
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised at how bad it was, because people do go to bat for this one. Some people do actually say they like it, and I can only assume it's because they saw it when they were young and they have that memory. And a fun fact, funnily enough, is the late Roger Ebert, this was his favourite Home Alone movie.
Yeah.
Have you heard that before?
Yeah, I have. And I was like, what?
It's really weird. I mean,
It is.
I appreciate an unpopular opinion, and that certainly is one. But
Yeah.
So there's that legacy as well. But so to look at it, like when it opens, and it opens in Hong Kong, I'm like, the fuck? What are we doing?
I know.
What are we doing now? And in a funny sort of way, if it stayed in Hong Kong and we had a Hong Kong Home Alone movie, it could have been a better movie, because shifting up the location. And I've got to assume if that was Hong Kong, then most of the budget went on those scenes, I would think.
I think so.
Very boring. It was very like infantile. And I think that's the one defense I can give it, is then probably it is a kids movie. Like that's what they were aiming at. And I think that's the thing, but it does play very young, whereas the other Home Alone, the first two, they are like sort of classic family movies.
Family films, yes.
The way they're written, they can appeal to like any age sort of thing. And this doesn't have that. I mean, this, like, you have to be like 5, 6, 7. Like, if you're any older than that, you're probably not going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so then it just comes down to the comedy of it. And the trouble is the comedy of it sucks. Like,
it does.
If the gags were better, then okay, I could have given it more of a pass. But the comedy is just so lame and obvious. It's very lowest common denominator, very predictable. There's all sorts of faces I know in this, actually, because like one of the crooks as well, like the youngest one, I think, is in like the Twin Peaks movie. So I know, and I think all the crooks I know from something, like they look familiar. But I mean, I don't know why you need 3 or 4 crooks. Like that was just overkill. And yeah, just all the stuff with them, it kind of felt like a pale imitation of like the antics of the crooks from the first two, and the stunts. There was no good stunts. I mean, they're kind of cutting around it so much, and I think you could tell then they weren't doing practical stunts, because it got to a certain point in the scene and they would just cut away because like they obviously couldn't show anymore. One good gag, which I'm assuming was deliberate, which I'll give them credit for, is when one of the crooks was in disguised, he was disguised as Inspector Clouseau from the Pink Panther movie.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Oh, it certainly looked a lot like it. So if that's intentional, I'll give them credit for that.
Yeah.
That's quite funny. But like, yeah. Apart from that, you're really struggling to find anything really. I mean, you've got a lot of toilet humor in it.
Yeah, that was insane. It was crazy how much toilet humor there was. I was really getting to the point where I was like, okay, who wrote this? Because this is like bottom of the barrel humor. And like I said, like you said, the repetitiveness of it. There was so much of it. One or two gags, fine, but there were at least 4 or 5. And yeah, that part was nasty.
Family lacks any chemistry, like you said.
Mhm.
It's a shame we didn't see more of Scarlett Johansson. She's barely in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if she might not have been as good when she was a kid. I don't know, because I haven't seen that much of her at that age. But yeah, she's probably going to be better than a lot of the other actors in the movie, I would think. But
yeah,
I was disappointed we didn't see more of her references to the first one. Like, they're almost, even though it's not the McAllisters, they're almost modding them on the McAllisters as just a cheap kind of nod to the first one. And another thing, which again is like the realism of it just going out the window, but not Kevin, I did it. Alex, I think his name is. Yeah. This one. He is supposed to have chicken pox, and yet he's leaping all over this house like nobody's business. I've had chicken pox, and I can tell you're in no state to be like leaping about a house, getting up to all sorts of antics. And then you have the mother who keep coming up with excuses to leave her son home alone, even though he's got pox. Like, the dad's at work, and okay, so really it's the mother's responsibility to stay with him. Because I'm guessing the other two were at school, probably.
School, so
it's sort of the mother's responsibility, but she kept coming up with. She's a terrible parent. She kept coming up with excuses to leave their house, but I got no sense of the family dynamic.
No,
really.
Absolutely none.
No chemistry and just no story, because like part of the thing in the first two, especially the first one, is you do care about Kevin because he goes on an arc over the course of the story. The characters kind of go on an arc, so that's why you care. So what did you think of the actor in this, the main kid? Like,
I didn't love him. I mean, kid actors, it can be very hard with kid actors because obviously, when you're a child, you don't have the emotional maturity to play certain roles. So it takes a rare kid actor to be able to be charismatic the way that Macaulay Culkin was. And look, I didn't think he was bad. Like, I wasn't wanting to reach into the screen and strangle him or anything, but he was very bland, I think. Like, he didn't have any charisma for me. Like you said, he didn't really have an arc, like we said in the first one, Kevin has that arc of learning to be independent, learning to take care of himself, learning to appreciate his family, and learning, the meaning of Christmas. Whereas this, it's just a kid home alone, sick. I know they tried to like show us that the kid was like mechanically minded. Like, we saw that like in his room, he's like fiddling with his toys and he's got like little, remote control things. But I felt particularly like the traps in this one were like just ridiculous and so over the top and didn't make sense that a kid this age would be laying these sorts of traps. Again, like when you watch, especially the first Home Alone, you do have to stretch your imagination a little, but you can kind of imagine 8-year-old Kevin coming up with these traps. He's using things around the house. He's using his little toy cars. He's using cans of paint that's lying around. Whereas this kid is setting up traps that like send bad guys through like 3 stories of floor and like, having toilets come down on top of them and stuff like that. Like, it's like stuff that you can't imagine an 8-year-old kid rigging up by himself. But we're just supposed to believe that this kid can just do all this because he can. So I didn't find the kid, like I said, I didn't want to smack him or anything. Like, he wasn't making me want to strangle him, but he definitely was not charismatic. And his brattiness, like, 'cause he did have some bratty moments, like, as again opposed to Kevin, who has an arc, so you want his bratty moments in the beginning so that he can then learn from them. This kid didn't have that. He was exactly the same at the beginning of the film as he was at the end of the film. And and I mean, it's a kid's film, so we don't need like a big, involved coming of age journey quest thing, but you do want the kid to have a little bit of growth. Like we say, you see Kevin come to appreciate his family and learn to be independent, but you just don't have that here. So not the worst kid actor I've ever seen, but definitely not the best. What about you? What do you think of Alex?
I think that's about right. I think the characters may be worse than the actor. Like, I think the actor's sort of okay, but like a step down. But like, the character was annoying from almost the word go. Yeah, and he's way too cool in this. I mean, I think the next film's even worse for that. But this, we'll get to that. But this kid is way too cool under pressure, especially since he's meant to have chicken pox and get more into the technology. And that's obviously a way they're going to update these movies. And I get that, because technology does become more of a thing. It does
march on, so yes.
But you can overdo it. And sometimes with Home Alone movies, you lose part of the appeal if you dip too much into technology. But I sort of think with this, like, as we said, so many reasons why it doesn't feel like a Home Alone movie. And one is the way it's set up at the start, like the feel of it and the music. Because I mean, at best, maybe you would say a Spy Kids movie, but like really with the music and the look of it, it felt more like a James Bond film, or like Mission Impossible might be. That meets Home Alone, and it just didn't. And I'll just comment on the music is absolutely terrible in this.
Yeah, it's really not good.
The music sucks. Like, I don't know if I would judge it differently if it was in what's meant to be like a thriller type film or action. Yeah. Like maybe in that sort of movie, I wouldn't mind it. But because it's in this sort of movie, but I just thought it was really like generic, and
I agree.
Just no sort of like feeling to it.
Yeah. No personality. It didn't feel like the first, like we talked about the score with the first two, and they really emphasized that Christmas feel and the playful feel and everything. And it's a beautiful score. But this was just like, you're right. It was like, and it didn't feel like a Home Alone film. That was terrible. That My Town.
I've got it.
Montage.
This is My Town.
Yes.
And then there's a song called that or something, and the song is absolutely abysmal.
Terrible.
That was totally the music is terrible. I mean, that's something that stood out. It lacks the magic of Christmas. I mean, in these movies, like, they make it clear that it's set at Christmas, but there's none of that sort of feeling.
No, this could just be a generic kids film. You could have set this at any time of the year. The Christmas setting adds nothing to the movie, like absolutely nothing, and it's really quite sad.
Dad forgets to put his pants on, and the kid has to remind. I think that might be.
Yeah, I think it is. Again, more just kind of like toilet humor and like, haha, someone has no pants. And it's very low bottom of the barrel humor in this. And I kept thinking, it's a kids film, but kids films don't have to be dumb. Like, that's a misconception. Like, kids films can still be smart. You don't have to insult kids' intelligence. And I think that this film does, just with everything. Yeah.
Well, I've remembered a couple more things, because there's this running theme in this film about weird sort of pets, isn't it? Because his only friend in the world seems to be that mouse who he takes on mission. I absolutely hated when they're trying to do like riffs, because this is the one, the parrot, the stuff with
the parrot.
The fact that the parrot actually is used to distract one of the crooks. And I made a gag on stream that the parrot might have more charisma than anyone in the movie. And,
you might be right about that. I think so.
I stand by that. But then there's that really stupid scene with the dog where he literally freezes when the policeman comes. It's like freeze, and the dog freezes.
I know. Oh, just
that's
so
definitely
dumb.
One of those scenes where I can't believe what I'm watching, sort of thing. Boring, lacks any sort of magic of the first two. really dumb gags, bad villains. Like the villains don't stand out. It's a dumb plot. Doesn't feel like a Home Alone movie. And I mean, at the end of the day, if the Crooks stuff isn't up to scratch and the family stuff isn't up to scratch, then you're on. Yeah, you're on to a loser with these movies, really. So that's Home Alone 3. Rachel, what are you going to rate it?
2. I'm going with 2 out of 10. I can't go any higher. I mean, it wasn't the worst kids movie I've ever seen. I've definitely seen worse kids movies that are dumber, but it really hurts itself, I think, by attaching itself to the Home Alone brand. Like, it was just a generic heist kids movie that was maybe packaged as something different. It might be slightly better, but yeah, there's no charisma. I did like seeing there's a certain actor who plays the first cop when the kid calls the cops and they come and they're lecturing him about how he can't make fake police calls. That guy plays the janitor on Scrubs, and he is fantastic in that. So it gets like a point just for having him in it because he's so good. But yeah, just a very generic, very boring movie that just really has no connection to the first two. So yeah, 2 out of 10 for me. Definitely a huge step down from the previous two films.
That's a massive drop.
Yeah. What about you?
Pardon. Well, I'll go with a 3. Again, probably because I've seen worse, and I think just because I probably bear in mind that if you are the right age for it, it probably would work for that age group.
Yeah.
Like they probably would stick it on and enjoy it perfectly fine. But it's a very limited age group. That's the problem. As I said, probably the oldest you could be and enjoy it is maybe 8 or something. I think over 8, you're probably not going to enjoy it that much. And again, it just comes down to the gags then, because they're obviously going for that more than making it this big charming family movie. And the gags are just terrible.
Terrible.
The humor is rubbish.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally forgettable. One of the longest 100 minutes I've ever seen. Because 100 minutes for this movie was a long running time. I mean, normally I would say that's a great running time, but for this movie, it felt really painful.
Agree. At one point, I think I looked at my phone, the stream on my phone, and just went, oh my God, I still have 40 minutes left. How is that possible? So yes, the pacing was definitely terrible.
Okay, so that's Home Alone 3. Sadly, we're only halfway through this franchise at this point, because I could see the decline continuing, perhaps. But let us know. I know this film does have fans, and I'm so curious if it's that thing of they remember it from their youth and they enjoyed it then. I don't know what Roger Ebert's excuse was, because he was like a middle-aged man or something. But okay. Whatever. But yeah, let us know your thoughts on Home Alone 3 in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always, and you can support the channel on patreon.com/boardnow. You get some early access for reviews such as this. You can also get movie and TV commentaries, also some exclusive discussion type videos in the future. So look out for that. Support the channel. As I said, just $1 a month. And on another franchise note, I'm recently made a start on the James Bond franchise. So I'm going through the whole series. So starting way back in the 60s with the Connery Bonds and going through all the various eras, all the way up to the 2021 Daniel Craig last Bond outing. So those reviews should be quite fun. If you're a fan of that franchise. I've done the first couple, so go and check those out now. Rachel, if you want to plug your channel.
Guys, you can follow me, Rachel McDonald, video essays on movies and TV shows. Maybe we'll have some Christmas stuff up. We'll see. It's a bit of a crazy time of the year. But my Tumblr and my Twitter are also linked on my YouTube, and Keith will usually put a link in the description. So come and follow me everywhere.
Thanks, guys. Happy holidays, and just be glad you don't have to watch these movies for the holiday season. Just one thing. You smacked my Winky. See you later.
And with that, we're done.
$10 million for the microchip, Mr. Beaupre.
We will find it. Their mission is deadly.
Has to be on a plane. We are going to Chicago.
Their technology is state-of-the-art.
There are 26 miners in the 14 houses we haven't checked.
Their strategy is unheard of.
We're gonna work houses in broad daylight.
It's the suburbs. Nobody's home during the day.
They've got the perfect plan.
That's the house. Tomorrow we hit.
He's got the chicken pox.
What?
And he's home alone.
Nobody's gonna do anything about this. I'll just have to do it myself.
I'll go in the front.
Heads up! Ouch. Hi. Surprise.
I'm coming down!
From John Hughes, the writer and producer of Home Alone.
See ya.
This Christmas, staying home will become an adventure again. Home Alone 3.
Wait till you see what I do next.
Written by John Hughes. Directed by